shall we begin?
All right.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Hail to the king, baby.
What's in the box?
I'm vengeance.
This is going to be quite the ride.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. It feels so good to say that again. It really does. Honestly, it really does feel good to say that again. And this is usually, even though I am saying it right now anyway, the podcast where we talk about all the big breaking movie news items of the week, the trailers that came out this week, as well as give you the rundown on the movies coming out on streaming and in theaters. However, I've been away for quite a while, really, pretty much 2 months. And if you follow the social media accounts, I think I realize this. I think I only really posted about it on Twitter, so I apologize to the Instagram crowd. I posted something on there. I didn't keep you guys updated like I did on Twitter. I did say that I was away because I had to have emergency surgery all the way back in April, and that sidelined me for quite a bit, longer than I thought, honestly, really. But I'm fine now, and podcasts will be coming back. Admittedly, the podcast will be a bit different for a little while, most likely. Obviously, the writer's strike is still going on, which was a big thing, and obviously we'll talk about that with the podcast up and running if it was. And that is effectively, obviously, affecting all of Hollywood, including what makes this podcast the movie news cycle. So I'm going to be pivoting away from the movie news for now, focusing more on newer movie reviews and reviews on older movies. I mentioned on social media, on the social media accounts back at the beginning of the year, that I was going to do some reviews on older movies and newer movies. And this time, with obviously everything going on right now, it will give me the best option to do that. However, my return podcast, aka this podcast, will be a year in review so far. We're now more than halfway through the year. So it makes sense that I would take a look back at some of the movies that I've liked. My favorite movies of the year so far, really. Of course, I haven't gotten to watch everything yet. So I have a very small list of movies that I haven't seen yet that I most likely would have mentioned or talked about. So if you're wondering, hey, what about these movies? I haven't gotten around to them yet. So Missing, Infinity Pool, Kill Book Soon, which is a movie on Netflix, Tetris and Ghosted, which are both on Apple TV Plus, and Polite Society, which I just read is coming out sometime probably before the end of the month. I think even early next month on Peacock. So I'll get a chance to watch that. And there's some A24 movies in there as well that I haven't gotten a chance to watch yet. But I know you're wondering, you were recovering from surgery. Why haven't you watched these movies? I was catching up on TV, apparently, all my time. So, yeah, there you go. There is that. So I'm going to run down the movies that I won't get too into, at least right now. Some of these will undoubtedly end up on the end of the year lists when we get to that point. So I have seen all these movies: Jung-E, Megan, Plane, Knock at the Cabin, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Cocaine Bear, Creed 3, 65, Scream 6, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Operation Fortune, Luther: The Fallen Son, Power Rangers Once and Always, The Pope's Exorcist, Evil Dead Rise, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, Sisu, Fast X, Renfield, Mafia Mama, The Little Mermaid, Hypnotic, The Boogeyman, and Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. Like I said, I'll be definitely talking more about those movies in detail by the end of the year. But I'm here to focus mainly on my favorite movies of the year so far, which surprisingly is a small list. I won't get too into them, like spoiler-wise anyway. I want to ease in a little bit to the podcast, because if you have been following the podcast long enough, been listening long enough, you know that when I take breaks, for whatever reason, I take a break or I take a week off, or for whatever reason, whether it's personal life or just not time to record or anything, any kind of time off from the podcast, I come back. That first podcast is a disaster to listen to edit. Believe me, if you think it's bad listening to that, it is even worse trying to edit that podcast. So I'm trying to keep it short and sweet on this return podcast, because I don't want to overdo it, but I also don't want to, make this impossible for you to listen and impossible for me to edit, even though I am, pretty much good to go on the return. So here you go. Here are the movies, my favorite movies of the year so far. These are not in order, by the way. These are just the movies they're pretty much in the order that I saw them in terms of release dates. So, because that's how I usually keep track of my movies that I watch anyway throughout the year. So these are my favorite movies of the year so far. Again, very small list, my opinion, obviously, and I won't get too into them, like spoiler heavy or anything like that. But just in case I do end up spoiling something, I just want to put the spoiler warning up here, so that way, I don't get anybody like, you spoiled something. It's like, no, I told you I might spoil something. So even then, I won't get too into spoilers because, again, if you listen to the podcast long enough, you know that I'm not the biggest spoiler guy in the world. I don't usually talk about spoilers in the podcast just because I want to give people a chance to watch it and enjoy it. And a lot of times, spoilers ruin the experience, at least in my case. So, all right, let's get to the list. All right, so the first movie we're going to talk about is John Wick Chapter 4. Arguably, I know I just said that none of these movies were in order, but this is arguably my favorite movie of the year so far. It's action-packed. The action sequences in this movie are incredible. Everyone's still talking about that over-the-top one shot near the end of the movie, which was inspired by the video game. I forgot to put the title on my list, but you can easily find it. But everyone's talking about that. It's a nice end to the story. Maybe. But it's the road that they want to take. It makes sense, and they obviously closed it out the way they should. I just liked it. I liked it. I watched it twice. I watched it once in theaters. I watched it once at home. Once it was available to watch at home. I love it. I have been a fan of the John Wick series since the very beginning. I can't wait for the Continental TV show. I can't wait for what else they do in this series. I know they already kind of are developing another one. There's no details on the other one, but there's doing that. They got the spin-off of the Ballerina with Ana de Armas leading. That's, I think, supposed to come out next year. I really love this series. And on the more nerdier side, obviously, I love the inclusion of Donnie Yen. Donnie Yen's one of my favorite martial arts actors out there. So he's in there. Marcus Aurore, who plays one of the main henchmen, or plays the main henchman. And even Scott Adkins is in there in the fat suit. I also really love that they brought back some of the pieces from the first movie score, because on top of the first movie being, kind of what it was, I really liked that score from the first movie. I have that score on my playlist, and it just puts me in a mood, every time it pops up on shuffle. But I really liked they brought it back for this one, especially, knowing that this was, going to be the ending that they were trying to aim for. So I really like that they brought that back, kind of, brought it back full circle and stuff like that. So obviously they're doing more with the series. They're going to do more with the series. The series is successful. It's popular. They're doing, again, the TV show. They got the spin-off. They got the other movie. They got John Wick, Chapter 5, whatever that entails is in development. So, I cannot wait to see what else they do. I love the world that we're in. I know it's easy to make fun of Keanu Reeves and his acting and all that, but I think what they were trying to do with the character, it makes sense to why he was acting like that. And Rena, I forgot her last name. I'd put her last name. I'm kind of just going off the top of my head here, as I tend to do sometimes on the podcast. But Rena, I forgot her last name. She's a singer. She plays the Hironori Sanada's daughter in the movie, which, Sanada being in the movie is also really cool. But she's fantastic. She kind of, stole the show. She's great supporting character. If they bring her back and do something with her character, I think that'd be really cool too. So there you go. John Wick Chapter 4, one of my favorite movies of the year, arguably my favorite movie of the year as well. My next favorite movie of the year is Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves. I said it when I saw the trailer for the first time. We talked about it here on the podcast. I said it when I did the movie draft with 3 films in the podcast. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves looked way better than it had any right to. And now after watching it, even after the first time, even after the movie's release, I still really liked this movie. I enjoyed the hell out of Dungeons & Dragons. You don't have to know anything about Dungeons & Dragons. In case you're still on the fence about watching it or haven't watched it yet, you don't have to know anything about it. This could just be another fantasy movie that you watch with your buddies, that you watch with your family, and you're going to watch it and you're going to enjoy it because it's an easily enjoyable film. The cast is great, the action's really good, and the movie is, a lot of the time, very beautiful to look at. The scenery is really awesome. There's not, too much CG background on it. It looks like they actually filmed in a lot of the locations there. It doesn't try to make you feel left out if you don't play or know the rules of D&D like I do. I had so much fun watching this movie. It's on Paramount Plus. I'm sure it's on other platforms as well, but that's where you can watch it if you have a subscription to Paramount Plus. I'm definitely going to watch this again before the end of the year because, again, I just had so much fun with this movie. Like I mentioned, the cast is great. Chris Pine's awesome. Michelle Rodriguez is awesome. Sophia Lillis is awesome. Justice Smith. I wish they had done a little bit more with his character, but he's great in here as well. Reggie Page from Bridgerton, who's obviously gone on and has been doing different things now. He's in here. He has a very small role, even though he's heavily in the promotional material. He has a very small role in this movie, supporting role really, and but he does it. He does it so well with the short amount of time he has on screen. He does it so well. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with Dungeons and Dragons. I really did. It's a really fun movie. Next up is Air. Listen, I'm not a shoe guy. I'm not a Jordans guy. I've never owned a pair of Jordans, and I'm okay with that. Air doesn't really try to sell you on the idea of buying Jordan. It's obviously a story about Sonny Vaccaro, who is of course played by Matt Damon, trying to get Michael Jordan, who I like that we never see in the movie, because it's not about him. Because then it does become, okay, who's playing Jordan, and why isn't Michael Jordan more in the movie? Then it becomes about that, and it's not. It's about Sonny Vaccaro. It's about Matt Damon's character trying to get Jordan to come and sign with Nike, who at the time, we have to remember, Nike was not the go-to shoe company. It was Adidas, it was Converse, and it wasn't Nike. And they especially were not known for their sports shoes, especially their basketball shoes. So that was really cool. Damon's great in here. He's really great as Sonny Vaccaro. His last final pitch at the end of the movie is just so damn good. And it's so inspirational, and I loved what they did with it. They were doing a speech, and then they were kind of just showing you this flash forwards of Jordan's life, and it's just it works so well. That, and then playing that on top of Damon's speech, it worked so well. It was very effective, and if you weren't sold on the movie up until that point, I think that sold you on it at the very end. Jason Bateman is another person that people talking about in this movie because he's really good. Jason Bateman's always good. Jason Bateman is, you want someone reliable, Jason Bateman is your guy, and he is reliable here in this movie like he has been pretty much any time he pops up. And he has a scene too where he's talking about what it means to him to work at Nike, and it's a scene that kind of happens near the end of the movie, right before kind of that final pitch that him and Sonny make to the Jordan family. He has that great scene about what it means to him, and it works. It just works. Like, even if this wasn't a movie about Sonny Vaccaro trying to get Jordan to sign with Nike, I think that scene just works in itself. I think that's a really great scene, and Jason Bateman rather does such a great job at that. And then we have Viola Davis being just simply Viola Davis. She's great. She's great in everything. It's a small role. She does have some meaty scenes, but a lot of those scenes are very small. And this could have been, I don't want to say a nothing role, but obviously, if you know a little bit about Jordan's history, you know that his mother played a very important role in pretty much everything that Jordan has done. And there was that story that Michael Jordan wouldn't give the rights, or when he was talking with Ben Affleck about the rights to the movie and making the movie, he mentioned that the only person he wanted to play his mother was Viola Davis. The fact that they got that was really cool. I think that was really cool that they were able to pull that off. And Viola Davis is really great. And then we got Chris Tucker back on the big screen. It's always great to see Chris Tucker there, and he does very well for his role as well. And I'm not entirely a sucker for sports movies. I do like a lot of sports movies, but I'm not like jumping at the bit to go watch every sports movie that comes out. And on top of that, and not saying that Air is not a sports movie per se. Obviously, it's they do talk a lot about basketball and a lot about lingo and certain players. And if you're a basketball player, especially around that time, you kind of probably know who a lot of those basketball players are. I did have to go back and do a little bit of research after the movie because I was like, who are these guys I've never heard of? But that there is that. So, but I really did like Air. I really had a great time watching it, and I enjoyed it. And And there was, a little bit something else, because it wasn't necessarily about the sport. It was really more about the people behind it. And I think that's really cool. So I had a lot of fun watching, and I think you will too. Currently on Prime Video, if you want to go check that out. All right, moving on. The Super Mario Brothers movie. Look, I had my doubts about the movie just as much as anyone. But I had my doubts from the very beginning when Nintendo announced they were partnering with Illumination Entertainment. Obviously, Illumination Entertainment, the studio behind the Despicable Me movies, The Secret Life of Pets, and Minions. And yeah, I just, I wasn't necessarily, on board with that. I don't know why. It just kind of, it felt odd and weird for some reason for me when it was announced. But then, and for many, the voice cast came out. And everyone was like, what are they doing? This movie's going to bomb. It's going to ruin my childhood and blah, 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 all the typical things that happen when, casting doesn't go fans' way. And then in Illumination, they dropped that first trailer. And everybody kind of shut up. They really did for a little bit. And then the second trailer came out, and then everyone was like, okay, all aboard the Super Mario Brothers movie hype train. And I felt very similar about that, because it was like, the trailers came out. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm all aboard the hype train. Let's do this. I love the look. It made sense now that it was in front of me, and the voice cast was fine. I know everybody and their mother had an opinion about the voice cast, and I said it here on the podcast. I am not joining, and I will never join on the Chris Pratt hate train. Is he the best Chris in Hollywood? That is debatable, and probably not. But I know, like many of you, the hate, not all the hates. He's probably said some stuff that is worthy of you disliking him. But a lot of the hate, some of the hate for Chris Pratt comes from a decision that his character made in Infinity War. And we all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, back to the movie. It was very good. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I remember reading a lot of the hate for the movie because of the things that didn't make sense to them. And my thought process at the time, I can't remember specifically why people... specific things why people hate. No, I remember now, because everyone was saying it was too kiddish, like it was made just for kids. And my thought process at that time is like, yes, it's a movie made for kids. It's a movie based on a video game. It's an animated movie by the same company that brings you the Minion movies and the Despicable Me movies. Who hurt you? Who hurt all of you that you can't have fun anymore, or that you think you can't have fun anymore? I don't know. I like the movie. Chris Pratt's, his voice, once you watch the movie, it's okay. It's fine. The Jack Black, obviously the famous thing out of the movie now is the Peaches song that Jack Black sings, and it like came out like in the top 100 or something like that when it was released entirely. Look, it's a kid's movie. Like, I don't know why people are all up in arms about a kid's movie, especially a Mario's movie based on, that's based on a video game. That has been based on a video game that has been out for a very long time. Like, it just does not make sense to me why people would be that upset about it. So I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna move on from that. But I had a lot of fun with it. I did feel like they may have crammed a little bit too much in there, but I really enjoyed what they had. Obviously Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong I think Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong was the weirder choice for me, because we all know Seth Rogen, and then obviously when Donkey Kong starts laughing, all I can see is Seth Rogen. So, but I'm not, I'm not a Seth Rogen hater either. Just saying, for me, the weirder casting choice was Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, because just, he just has a distinct sound to him, and it just doesn't feel like Donkey Kong. But I really enjoyed Super Mario Brothers movie. I am going to watch it again. I only watched it when I watched it in theaters for the first time, but I'm going to watch the movie again because I had a lot of fun with it. All right, moving on to the next movie. One of the last two movies we're going to talk about. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Look, I like how all of us, all Marvel fans, all fans of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, even if those are the only Marvel movies you like, I liked how all of us were prepared to collectively cry together in a movie theater over a talking raccoon. I loved that we were all on the same boat, that if they killed Rocket, we were going to riot. And we were all ready. We were ready to cry. We were ready to riot. We were ready to feel all these emotions, because those trailers were very emotional packed too. Now, thankfully, Rocket didn't die. But man, we did still feel every single emotion watching that movie. I've held back tears. I did. I am willing to admit I held back tears multiple times watching this movie. That scene with Rocket and Lila in the, I don't know, purgatory, if you want to call it. I felt that. When he says, "Can I stay?" I broke. I'm not gonna lie, I broke. When Nebula and Drax and Mantis find out that Rocket's alive and they hear him for the first time, yeah, I felt that. And then the ending with Dog Days playing, that I think that broke everybody. I think everybody at that point was like, yeah, that kind of broke everybody. And then when Peter goes to hug his uncle, that broke me too. Because that's just it's yeah. I'm getting all flustered talking about it now, but this was the final ride, as has been talked about and has been said multiple times for this team of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And James Gunn just somehow stuck the landing, finishing up the trilogy in a great way. Was it a complete flawless ending? No, but I think for what he was able to do with this movie and what the story that he wanted to tell, I think he landed it. I think he did a great job with it, and I think that's the important part. So I'm not gonna say oh no, that he didn't land it because of Adam Warlock just felt dumb. It's like, you guys really, do you remember Adam Warlock? Because he is supposed to be like this newborn child even in the comics, especially when he first debuted. Just because he has this majestic, regal look to him in the comics doesn't mean that he wasn't kind of who he was in the movie a little bit. But I liked Will Poulter's portrayal as well as Adam Warlock. I thought it worked. Obviously, Adam Warlock has a very long history in the comics, so his portrayal that he is now in the comics to what he was introduced in this movie, it felt fine. Yeah, I liked it. A movie is supposed to make us feel stuff, and Guardians of the Galaxy made me feel everything. That hallway sequence with No Sleep Till Brooklyn playing was awesome. I had a grin on my face the whole time. So kudos to them, and yeah, I'm looking, I'm happy about it. So Guardians of the Galaxy, is it up there with the Marvel trilogies? I think it is. It's not obviously saying much because there's not too many trilogies in the Marvel movies just yet, but it's up there. I would probably put it second after Captain America, because I think that Captain America movies are the best trilogy of the Marvel has. But take a look at that. We'll circle back to that in a future podcast episode. All right. So my final favorite movie of the year, you probably maybe even know where this is going: Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. What can I say that hasn't already been said about this movie? It is absolutely one of the best looking movies, if not the best looking movie, animated or live action, this year. And I think that title is going to stay. Yes, I think it's going to be more beautiful, live action, animated, whatever. It's a beautiful movie to look at. I think it's going to be better looking than Dune Part 2 that comes out later this year. I know those are probably fighting words for some of you guys listening out there. But I think it is. I think it is one of the best, if not the best looking movie of the year. The dedication, the animators, the producers, the directors, to even do half of what they did with Across the Spider-Verse is astounding to me. If this movie does not win every single animation award that comes out next year, it is going to be a sham, and it is going to be just disrespectful. I love how it's constantly changing, how the mood, like Gwen Stacy's world is supposedly was inspired by a mood ring, so her mood affects the animation in that world. I love the Venice vulture at the beginning of the movie, the Hobie obviously being one of the big Spider-Punk, being one of the big big things, because his animation is constantly changing every time he talks or anytime he walks. It's so good. It really is. It's so good. Like the just what they were able to accomplish with animation is just so jarring but so jarring in the best way possible. And I loved it. I loved what they were able to do with that. So yeah, and I also love how meta the movie is, because we're talking about canon events and making the Spider Society, and even Miguel O'Hara, who is pretty much wrong for what I think Miguel O'Hara is kind of a hypocrite. If you really like go back and watch it and then, you know, see what he's saying and see what he's doing, I think he's kind of a hypocrite. Anyway, but kind of making them kind of basically comic book fans and community in the most respectful way possible, making, you know, how characters are supposed to act and who characters really are and stuff like that. And I think even one of the directors, or I think one of the producers, there's a video of them talking about that, because obviously Miguel O'Hara's, you know, his whole thing is like, Miles was never supposed to be Spider-Man. He doesn't belong. He's an anomaly. And Miles is like, no, I'm one of you. I have proved that I am one of you guys. So I thought that was really great. And I liked how they also made Gwen essentially also kind of the main character. The movie was it like 30 minutes of the first 30 minutes of the movie is all Gwen? I thought that was great. And she's not just a supporting character. And the ending, I know everybody's like, what the hell was going on? Why did it just end there? And I feel like that's a thing a lot this year. I don't know why it is. I think maybe because, you know, these movies were being filmed during COVID or during the COVID era, or just, I don't know what it is. I think people are just like, oh, we're going back into theaters. We need people to keep coming to theaters. The splitting of these movies and making part ones and part twos. Now, granted, when this movie was first announced, it was announced as part one, and then like months later they changed it to it just being Across the Spider-Verse, and then part 3 is going to be called Beyond the Spider-Verse. So there is that. But, you know, Fast X is like that, because Fast X is essentially a part 1 of the story, because it ends on that cliffhanger that it does. And, you know, we got Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning part 1 coming out, but that, you know, they were very forward and upfront about that. Like, no, this is part 1 to the story. Part 2 is coming out, you know, later. So I don't know what it is about, you know, movies, especially now the I don't want to call it post-COVID era, because there's still COVID out there, but I don't know what it is now that they're like, no, like this is just part 1 of a story. We're maybe not going to tell you it's part 1 of a story because we want you to come back. Like, I think if you do that enough, I think fans are going to be pissed off. So you just got to be wary of that. But I think for us fans who, you know, follow the movie news and stuff like that, we knew this was part 1 of a story. But even then, the ending of the movie is like, oh yeah, it's like, I can't wait to see, you know, part 2. But it's like, I really want to see the ending of this story right now because of everything you've given me so far in this movie. But there you go. I still loved it though. I still really enjoyed and loved Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It is definitely going to be one of my top movies at the end of the year, one of my favorite movies throughout the year, unless something crazy happens in the rest of the year and just knocks it off. But I highly doubt that's going to be the case. All right, so that was the first half of the year, basically. But what's coming up, obviously? You know, I don't want to leave you guys hanging on that. I don't want to make a part 2 to this podcast, even though I just said that. The rest of June, we have Wes Anderson's newest film, Asteroid City, and of course, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. July, we have Insidious: The Red Door, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I just talked about, The Haunted Mansion, Disney's new version of the Haunted Mansion movie, and of course, the head-to-head weekend of Barbie and Oppenheimer, and then that's all in July. August, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, The Meg 2, The Trench, Gran Turismo, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and Blue Beetle, which of course is the other new DC movie. September, Equalizer 3, The Nun 2, A Haunting in Venice, which is the new, the third movie of the Hercule Poirot movies, like The Murder on the Orient Express and stuff, and Death on the Nile. This is the third movie. This is the spooky version, obviously, the horror version of Agatha Christie's, I think her only kind of horror-esque story. So they're interesting that they would go the third route with that, but that's pretty cool. And then of course Expendables 4, which just released their trailer, coming out in September. October, Kraven the Hunter, Exorcist Believer, which is the new Exorcist series coming out, or the new potential trilogy of Exorcist movies coming out. So there's that. The new Martin Scorsese movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, comes out in October. The long-anticipated Five Nights at Freddy finally comes out. And then the newest Saw movie, supposed to come out in October as well. November, Dune Part 2, like I mentioned earlier. The Marvels, Taika Waititi's newest film, Next Goal Wins. The Hunger Games prequel, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Disney's newest animation film, Wish. And Ridley Scott's next epic, Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix. December, you have Wonka, the prequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, starring Timothée Chalamet as Willy Wonka himself. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which was supposed to come out last year, and they kept pushing it back, and then it was supposed to come out earlier this year, and then they're like, no, we're just going to release it, a whole year later than we were supposed to. So there you got that. You have the Ghostbusters Afterlife sequel coming out in December, and then, of course, you have the new adaptation of The Color Purple coming out in December. The rest of the year looks stacked, guys, and these are just the movies coming out in theaters. I didn't even talk about the movies that are coming out on streaming. We still have a really great rest of the year, a really great list of movies, and this is just some of the big movies. There's obviously a lot of other movies coming out that I just didn't, I just kind of took some of the bigger titles that people will probably recognize and put those out there. So, but there's a lot of other stuff coming out that I can't wait for, and we will obviously talk about here on the podcast as well. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys. So, let me know what you guys thought. What are some of your favorite movies of the year? You guys can let me know. If you listen to this on YouTube, you can let me know in the comments. Maybe even give a little reason why. Or if you want to go to the social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, I always check those. I'm constantly checking those, especially now. So to hear back from you guys, because I want to hear from you guys. What are some of your favorite movies of the year so far? This is my list, obviously. It could be different from yours. So thank you guys so much for listening to this return podcast. Hopefully it wasn't too brutal. Hopefully it won't be too brutal editing, because you guys don't have to hear the atrocity of me trying to edit and everything. You just listen to the final product. But it didn't feel too bad. Honestly, I think I've gone past that groove. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. No matter where you're listening to, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Anchor, all those good places. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Go follow the social media accounts. I will be coming back. I will be doing reviews. Again, I'm going to try to figure out what's going to go on, because there's really, again, the movie news just isn't really there. And the trailer's just there, but the movies that are coming out, I don't know. Well, I'll figure it out. In the meantime, we'll be doing a lot of reviews and stuff like that. So keep an eye on those. The release schedules may be a little different because of that, but I'll probably try to still keep a Friday download just because, it's Friday. Yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on timeline schedules and stuff like that on social medias. Give you another reason to follow me on social media. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you guys. And I will see you guys on the next go around. In the meantime, be good people, be safe, and as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!